The healthy human body needs movement to survive, but how does this movement get stimulated to occur? Through dopamine production. Dopamine is a chemical signal or neurotransmitter that is produced in the substantia nigra that stimulates movement throughout the body. It stimulates movement when it goes through the path from the substantia nigra to the basal ganglia to the motor cortex. The basal ganglia is a collection of subcortical nuclei that process chemical signals given by different parts of the human brain. The basal ganglia in this case will process the information sent by the chemical signal in the form of dopamine and send a signal to the motor cortex after it's been processed. The motor cortex is the portion of the brain located in the rear part of the frontal lobe, which inhibits movement in the body by chemical signals sent to it. In this case, it receives a chemical signal that was sent off by the basal ganglia once it was stimulated to get sent by dopamine. And then it'll take that signal and signal the rest of the body to inhibit a certain bodily motion.
Parkinson's disease is a progressive brain disease, which means that the symptoms are more probable or worsen as people age. Throughout the video, I will be referring to Parkinson's disease as PD. PD is characterized by slowness, rigidity, and difficulty in initiating movements. It occurs when nerve cells in the area of the brain that regularly produce dopamine die or become impaired. This causes the shutdown of motion or muscle rigidity. Alpha-synuclein is a protein most commonly found in the brain on the tips of neurons in the presynaptic terminals encoded by the alpha-synuclein gene. Those with PD have a gene mutation in the LRRK2 Park7Pink1 or alpha-synuclein gene. This causes a protein aggregation. This causes clumps of protein called Lewy bodies to form and a dramatic loss of dopaminergic neurons. Misfolded alpha-synuclein proteins are one of the largest causes for PD because the aggregates appear to be toxic, which causes death or injury to the neurons. Acetylcholine is another protein involved in cell communication in the body. It is the main neurotransmitter that controls involuntary movements. Higher levels of acetylcholine in the body are hypothesized to cause involuntary movements observed in patients with PD. G proteins are found in those who do not have PD. G proteins regulate ion channels, metabolic enzymes, transporter proteins, and other parts of the cell machinery, such as transcription. This is what normally happens at the cellular level to people without PD. Please note that these images are not drawn to scale. Pictured here are two neurons, the left presynaptic neuron and the right postsynaptic neuron. The pink dots in the vesicles and the surrounding area of the presynaptic neuron represent the ligands, which in this case is dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that sends the chemical messages to the postsynaptic neuron. The blue and green squares of the postsynaptic neuron represent the D1 and D2 receptor proteins. When the dopamine travels across the transduction pathway as a chemical neurotransmitter and attaches to the receptor protein, it activates the G protein, which is represented by the red circle, and activates the enzyme represented by the brown circle that carries on to conduct transcription. This causes the ability for voluntary movements. Now to compare, we will observe what happens at the cellular level to patients with PD. The deficiency in dopamine, as discussed earlier, causes a problem in the transmission of the neurotransmitters. When the presynaptic neuron tries to send the dopamine ligands to the postsynaptic neuron, the signaling is blocked because there is either a lack of dopamine or none being produced at all. This is due to the dramatic loss of dopaminergic neurons or dopamine-producing neurons. This follows the large presence of Lewy bodies caused by protein aggregation. This means that the patient will not be able to carry out voluntary movement. Additionally, the subthalamic nucleus can become overactive and act as a brake on the globus pallidus interna, which causes a shutdown of motion and rigidity. When it is overstimulated, it has an over-inhibitory effect on the thalamus, which causes tremors.
In comparison to other diseases, Alzheimer's disease is like Parkinson's disease, as they're both brain illnesses that worsen over time. As this disease progresses and cells begin to lose any and all function in the brain begins to lose basic motor skills. Possible solutions could be fetal tissue, which replaces dead or diseased skin cells. Another possible solution being brain-stimulating drugs, L-DOPA being a molecule that is able to cross the brain barrier and be converted to dopamine in the CNS. Implanting dopamine-secreting neurons, either in the midbrain or basal nuclei, is a potential solution.